Welcome to the Future is Borderless podcast with David Nilssen. We feature top entrepreneurs and thought leaders from around the world, those who bring a global mindset and a unique perspective to their life and business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey guys, David Nilssen here. I'm the host of The Future is Borderless. The idea with this podcast is for me to bring on people from around the world who have a borderless mindset and are willing to share their ideas, some of the new innovations they're working on, best practices, things like that will help us lead in a rapidly growing world. Now, this episode is brought to you by DOXA Talent. DOXA Talent helps business leaders to source full-time, dedicated, highly skilled workers from around the world. And as a result, these companies can scale faster, increase margin, and improve culture. So to learn more about DOXA Talent, you can visit doxatalent.com. Now, my guest on this particular show is Marissa Frois, and she's the CEO of the Entrepreneur Source, a company that I've known for a long, long time that specializes in coaching individuals who are looking to transition into self-sufficient careers, and oftentimes leveraging business ownership, specifically in franchising. Now, she started at TES as an intern, which at the time was founder-led and rapidly rose to the position of CEO as the founder transitioned out of the business. And I believe this is due to her dedication to the organization, her learner's mindset, and just this approach to business growth. And I think you'll hear a lot about that in our conversation here in a second. For those of you that aren't aware, TES focuses on helping clients achieve their income, their lifestyle, wealth, and equity goals through career ownership. And Marissa, in this episode, champions the importance of education, and then this discovery process that helps clients transition into new career paths. Now, I should note that she has a bachelor's in psychology, and as we discuss, is a working mother. So we had a lot to talk about. Please enjoy this episode. So Marissa, welcome to The Future is Borderless.
Thank you. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this will be fun. I'm actually really excited to talk about your story because most of the time, I've invited people on who were the founders of their organization, but I think actually some of the most interesting conversations, we had Randy Wooten on one time. He's a turnaround CEO. He sort of jumps into a business that has already sort of been on its way, and there's this sort of goal to either turn it around or scale it to the next level. So I think this will be really fun to talk about, but maybe we could start there. Sure. I'd love to hear you're now the CEO of TES, but that's not where you started. So I'd love to just get a little history on how you joined TES, and then ultimately, what are the things that sort of happened along the way that allowed you to sort of step into that CEO position?
Yeah, sure. So I like to say I grew up within TES because I truly did. So the Entrepreneur Source is located here in Southbury, Connecticut. I grew up pretty much in the Southbury, Middlebury area. So as a teenager, worked at a couple places in town, worked my way through college, and that's how I met the founder of our organization, who is Terry Powell. And so as a teenager, started to really develop a relationship with Terry and his wife, Karen, and they would always talk to me about TES and the world of franchising, which I thought was just so interesting at 15 and 16 years old, because I thought franchising was the McDonald's of the world. So just really got to, learn what that was all about and what TES was doing. And so went away to school, and I would still work on the weekends. I kept in contact with them. And when I graduated, Terry had offered me the opportunity to come in as kind of an internship basis, maybe just get some business experience and see if I liked it. So I went into it thinking nothing more, that's what it was going to be. And, I'll get to work at this really cool place that I heard all about and get to interact with some of the team members that I had met. And then just started to fall in love with what we got to do, what TES was all about, the franchisees that we were working with, who kind of started to become family in some ways, and the team, in the same way. So just started to grow within the organization over time, in various different roles, and then just grew over the last 14 years or so. But I do think a big part of that growth definitely came from the way Terry built the business. So he, and the one line that comes to mind immediately is he would always say, we're not brain surgeons here at TES, luckily, so no one's going to die on the operating table if we make a mistake. And so he really promoted just trying new things and getting involved and really kind of believing in you, maybe before you believed in yourself. And so I think that was also really motivating and empowering, not just to me, but I would say the other team members that got to work really closely with him, because there really were no boundaries, whether it was in the role or within the organization. It just really promoted you to try and test new things.
I love that actually. Having through a different business partner with TES before, I've had a chance to sort of see how TES evolved. And it's one thing I've always admired about Terry is that he's willing to try things before others sort of
Yeah.
come along. So I think it's
Yeah.
great that he created that culture. I'm curious though, in that journey, so 14 years at TES, at what point did you realize that you were sort of being groomed to be the successor, that eventually Terry was going to step out of the business and you were going to be the one stepping in? I'm just curious, like at what point you kind of knew that that was the direction you were going, and how long did it take to make that transition?
Yeah. I probably didn't really realize it until the moment kind of arrived, but I think Terry knew what he was doing all along. But probably about a couple years before I took on the position, we run on EOS, or the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and they have a role of strategic integrator. So I stepped into that role, which was kind of priming me to, I think, what that next step was going to be. So Terry had spoken to me at that time about stepping into that role, taking a little bit more off of his plate and taking on more of the day-to-day operational needs of the business. So I did that. And then when he actually decided to semi-retire, which was a super big deal, Terry, right? We didn't think that day was going to come. He said, "Listen, I think you're ready for that next step." And again, going back to what we just spoke about, I'm like, am I ready? I don't really know, but he was totally willing to mentor me into it. And I had kind of been acting as if anyway. And so it kind of evolved into that over the last couple of years or so.
Well, you're not by yourself. I've owned my own business since 2003, and I'm still wondering if I'm ready. So
Yeah.
I
All
don't know if
right.
that ever goes away. And the other
Yeah.
thing too, I agree with you, is having known Terry for a long time, and actually was someone who was an early mentor for me in franchising.
Yeah.
I was surprised to hear that he actually stepped away and decided to allow that. So I thought it was great.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this now. Day one, you're the CEO. You step into that seat. Talk to me a little bit about some of the, I don't know, the challenges that you sort of faced, or as you sort of transitioned from that role of integrator into now that visionary role using the EOS
Yeah.
nomenclature.
So, gosh, I think it was probably a couple things. So, first, and I still struggle with this today, the whole idea of imposter syndrome was a big deal. And I think part of it was just because my entire evolution had been here at TES. So, that brought on a whole bunch of other things that came along with it. There was a lot of historical knowledge and things that I was holding on to because of my time here at TES. So, that was a really big problem. Just the belief in myself, but then also, how do I let go of these other things so I can elevate myself into this position? Because when Terry asked me, I said, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to put my all into it. But that really meant just growing myself in different ways that I haven't done before. Um, Again, showing up differently, showing the team members that had worked with me at that point for 10 to 12 years and our franchisees that I was going to show up differently and try different things to help elevate the system. So I think it were those things coming together, the belief, and then just learning to let go so that I could elevate in other areas.
Yeah. And how was the team's response to all this? Because, it's interesting. I love when people grow from within an organization, but it does create some unique dynamics, because at one point, people sometimes are peers, and then an individual gets moved into a role where now there's a reporting relationship, and that can create some unique challenges. So
Yeah.
how did the team respond to that transition?
Yeah. So, well, luckily we have the best team ever. I think they were better with it than I was. And that was part of that
Cool.
dynamic going into it is it going to be awkward? Am I going to be embraced in the right way? Will I be able to show up in the ways needed, having worked with these individuals for so long? And they just helped me put all of that aside. They were just so excited and so happy. And we work together as a team. There are no weird dynamics or hierarchy there. So they actually probably helped me get through that transition in a great way.
Cool. And I'd love to understand, and sort of how you view your leadership style versus maybe what they had before, and a little bit more about sort of the core values or principles that guide the decisions that you as CEO make.
Yeah. So I don't think that they changed all too much from the different roles that I was in. And I think they're probably pretty basic core principles. But I mean, always for myself, and I think the team that we work with, it's just lead with kindness and understanding, right? The world is crazy enough as it is right now. So just don't sweat the little things, and you never know what that other person is going through. So really try to be understanding, lead with kindness. The other principle is I'm just not the smartest person in the room, and that's okay, but I will find the smartest person in the room. So just being okay to admit that you may not know something, but being okay to find the people that do, bring them to the table and get the answers needed to help elevate the organization. Another thing is just open and honest, whether it's with the team, whether it's with our franchisees, even if it's tough. Honesty and communicating that is always the best way to go about it. So that's something that hasn't changed, but I just think I brought more of when I moved into the position. And then communication. So just trying to communicate more, bringing franchisees into the conversation earlier where we can, and just not feeling like we're hiding anything from them. And over communicating is always key, because your mind sometimes makes up what it doesn't know. And so eliminate that just by communicating it.
I love that. Yeah. Try not to see ghosts. That's something that
Yes.
I probably have guilty of before. The other
Yes.
thing I struggled with a lot early on in my career, which you just called out, is the fact that sometimes I wanted to be kind to people and not hurt their feelings. And so that open, honest, direct conversation that you're talking about, actually really important, because not giving the real feedback is actually the unkind thing to do. And that took me a long time to learn. So I appreciate that for sure.
Yeah, completely.
Let's talk a little bit about TES, because for some of the people that are listening to the podcast, they're not familiar with what TES does and really what the franchise coaching industry is. So could you talk a little bit about that? And then I'd love to dig into what makes a successful match between, your client and a franchise opportunity.
Sure. Yep. So the Entrepreneur Source is a career ownership coaching organization. We just are celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. So our career ownership coaches are helping individuals just explore what's next outside of the traditional job market. So helping them explore what their goals, needs, and expectations may be for themselves and their families, and then looking at the different ways to achieve success and the different vehicles to do that. One of those options may be to explore business ownership through franchising. And so if they get to that point, then our coaches will help them kind of evaluate different possibilities that could suit those goals that they went over with them. And then potentially they might invest in a business from there. So we're all about coaching individuals and really helping them explore what's next for their future.
So who is the ideal sort of client profile for you? Like, if you were to say, this is who we want to talk to, what does that person look like?
It's anyone. It's anyone. So we consider them seekers. So just any individual that has either always had a desire to be self-sufficient, maybe has always had an entrepreneurial itch or grew up in an entrepreneurial family, are tired of corporate America, have given their life to a job and maybe didn't get the same in return. So it's really just any individual that's open to explore possibilities outside of the W-2 life.
Got it. Okay. And if somebody goes through your process and they determine in that, hey, business ownership might be for me, can you talk a little bit about sort of how your coaches help them think about buying the right business for them?
Yeah. So it's a great question. And I think our coaches get a lot, especially for those that know about franchising and maybe went into the relationship wanting to explore that path more. They might ask, like, what's the hottest franchise, or what's the best, happening right now? And that's a horrible way to go into anything, but especially business ownership, because what's right for one person or what might be hot to one person today is not going to be good for all. So essentially what the coach will do is they'll take them through that coaching experience, and they'll have different tools and coaching conversations with them to really help them define what goals do they want for themselves and their family. And that's going to look different for everyone. And so as they go through that coaching experience and really define what that's going to look like, then they can look at possibilities that might best suit those individual goals that they defined with that client. So it really is going to look different for each person. But the great thing about that is they're going to love it and be successful in the path that they choose, because it's really going to help meet what they wanted to get out of their future.
Yeah, I think it's actually really cool what you guys do, because I believe, like myself, many people assume franchising actually means quick serve restaurants, right? Like I
Yeah,
grew
of
up,
course.
I worked for Subway when I was a teenager. I was a
Yeah.
sandwich artist, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
And I always thought of just McDonald's or Subway or Quiznos or Burger King, right? And the reality is, just about anything that you purchase or any service you leverage, there's probably a franchise concept for it.
For
So
sure.
certainly
Yeah.
opens up, I think, people's eyes to a whole kind of world of possibilities. Can
Yeah.
you share maybe a success story, a client that found their sort of perfect franchise match through TES? Is there one that comes to mind for you that stands out?
So there's one that comes to mind, but just because of the background behind it, and I'll share it because we have so many success stories. I could probably spend the whole day just talking to you about the different individuals we helped and their backgrounds and the experience we brought them through. But the one that stands out immediately is there was this young man. He was maybe 16 or 17 years old. He had decided to invest in Bitcoin because it sounded cool and it was a thing to do. So he did that, and he made a really smart decision as a teenager. And so ultimately he cashed that in, and he had a nice chunk of change that he was figuring out what to do with. And most young kids probably would have bought a car, or maybe did something, went on a shopping spree, or invested it into a home, who knows? But he wanted to invest in business ownership. And so he found one of our career ownership coaches, and he was maybe 18 or 19 at the time, and went through the coaching experience. I think he was still in high school at the time. So doing both, graduated, bought his business, and is just doing extremely well. So I thought that just goes to show you, all ages, anyone can benefit from going through that experience and just really exploring the possibilities that are available to them.
That's super cool, because you're right. I think about me, if I had a windfall of cash at 16 or 17 years old, I probably would not be
Yeah.
thinking about buying a business at
No,
that.
same. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I would have made the same decision, but kudos to you, because in the long run, it's going to be way more beneficial.
Totally. Well, let's talk a little bit about the industry. I mean, I think, clear, you guys are career ownership coaches. There's a portion of what you do that is related to franchising, but I'd love to talk about franchising for a second, because this is one of the models I think that I love so much, because next to SaaS, it's one of the most scalable models that I can think of. There's a lot that's happening externally right now, and I'm just curious, when you look at some of the current trends, what are some that stand out that are impacting franchising, and more specifically, how is TES sort of adapting to those different things?
So I'm going to take that in a different direction, if that's okay. And I'll look at it in terms of what we're doing to really help meet our clients' needs, and the way that is
Great.
kind of transforming. And it might be able to cross over both areas, but we look at it as just from a technology standpoint, really making sure that we're staying up to speed and that we're able to meet our clients where they're at in their discovery experience. So I jotted down some notes around AI, because it's really just been a core focus for us, not just at the team level and what we're doing within our own organization, but definitely with our franchisees, to make sure that they're able to adapt and interact with their seekers and clients in a different way. Because, and I'm sure you're aware, and probably most of the listeners have heard about AI multiple times in a day. And so really just putting some resources behind education when it comes to AI, adapting our own platforms when it comes to AI, to really create a better experience for all, not just our team, but our franchisees and the clients that they work with as well.
I think that's super smart. There was a guy I was listening to at a conference in where was I? I was in Singapore, and I was listening to this particular speaker, and he was basically saying, "Hey, look, the way that I see the world is there are those that will adapt AI today, and those that will not." And his belief is that in 5 years, that'll be the difference between existing and not existing. And so it's a really important topic.
Yeah.
Very cool. Are there other trends that come to mind, or things that are changing radically in the business that you guys are doing to sort of deliver more value?
So the only other thing that comes to mind is really just staying true to our TES differentiators and making sure that we're showing up as that pure coaching organization, right? So that is the foundation that Terry built, is just making sure that we're helping people explore all paths and doing what's right by them. So we can consider success just helping someone reach a point of clarity. Sometimes that point of clarity is going back into the job market. So really making sure as a coach, you're guiding the individual based off of what's going to be best for them. And sometimes business ownership and franchising is not going to be that vehicle or that path. And we celebrate that because we know if we create a really great experience and we stay true to helping them reach that point of clarity, then if it didn't work out, they'll probably recommend someone else because they enjoyed that experience so much.
Yeah. I want to just ask you briefly about sort of the way that you think about talent and culture, because right now I've noticed that there's this sort of bifurcation in terms of how people think about talent. And the question is really around workspace, in an office, hybrid, out of an office. What is TES's perspective on this? And how do you think about building culture in that sort of whatever decision you guys have made in terms of workspace?
Yeah, so it's that's a good question too, because that was a change and I think a shift from maybe Terry's thought process and the way he did things to my own. And so that was one of the things that we kind of evolved is just that. So we had gone to a hybrid approach. So we do have some team members that are here in Southbury, and they even work remote a few days during the week. And then we have team members all across the US, so they're completely remote anyway. And then we also have offshore talent that we work as well, and they have been phenomenal additions to our team. So I would say we're kind of all across the board there.
So how do you, I mean, with this is a topic I'm really passionate about, right? Obviously, offshore talent is the business we're in, remote
Yeah.
work. I have two organizations, both are 100% remote. And then of course, AI is sort of throwing gasoline on each of these.
Yeah.
My question to you is, how do you think about keeping people connected to each
Yeah.
other and to the organization when you're working across all sorts of time zones and locations?
Yes, yeah. So we're very intentional about bringing people together however we can, virtually, in person, so that they're still able to build those relationships with their team members, but then, also obviously be able to be in their home office, not have to travel to Southbury so often. So we'll do a lot of virtual happy hours, for example. We do Monday motivation meetings where everyone comes together and kind of shares what's happening or success stories there. We do a lot of organizational updates out to the team and out to our franchisees. And then we will try to get people together at least once or twice a year so that we are building those relationships in person. So again, I think it's leveraging technology to bring people together where we can in a very virtual world right now.
Cool. And then just one last question around this. So offshore talent is an interesting conversation. There's some people that are scared of it, other organizations that fully embrace it. How did your domestic team feel when TES made the decision to sort of recognize that talent can be sourced globally?
Yeah, they were completely open to it. I think they embraced it 100%. They were maybe a little nervous with, is the time zones going to change anything, or will we be able to interact? Will it be cultural things that kind of hinder the way we work with each other? So there were some small hesitations, but I would say those went away almost immediately as we started to grow our offshore talent team, and it's just continued to blossom over the last few years.
Wonderful. All right. I want to talk, we're coming towards the end, I think, of our time here, but I
Yeah.
want to talk a little bit about you as an individual, and maybe
Yeah.
not so much as an individual, but you as a mother, right? So
Okay.
I know that you, like me, have some young, I call them puppies, but young
I do.
children at
Yeah.
home. You're a mom, you're a CEO, you're a spouse. Like, how do you
Yeah.
manage all of the duties at home with your family, and also be able to be fully present as a CEO? Like, how do you manage
Yeah.
those two things?
Oh, that's a good
Or do
question.
you?
Yeah, some days I ask myself, like, am I thriving or am I just surviving today? And I think that's okay because there are going to be some days where it's tough. They're long days, you're tired, but I will say, it comes down to a couple things. First, it's just time management and respecting that time. So, I give it my all when I'm in the office. And then when I go home, I try to be very intentional about giving my all to my family and my kids and my husband, and turning my phone off and not checking emails around the clock, because the thing is, it's still going to be there in the morning. And whether I answered it last night or this morning, it's going to be okay. So being intentional there. And then I'm very system and process oriented. So I have a system that helps me be productive at work, and I have a system that helps me be productive at home. And so that has helped a lot. And then family, thankfully, I know we were talking about it before we jumped on, but my spouse has been awesome. We have family that lives close, so they help a lot during the day so that I could do what I need to do here at the office. And I'm so grateful to them. So that's been
awesome.
very helpful as well.
It takes a village to raise a family. It also takes a
Yeah.
village to lead a business, because you need that same support level.
Yeah.
It's funny, my business partner at Guidant Financial, who I know you've met before, he and I always talk about the fact that we really need work-life integration, not work-life separation. I love what you said about being present, but like what works for your family has to also work for the business. Those things can't conflict with each other.
Yeah.
I think you did a great job of sort of defining that. So
yeah, thank you.
all right, final question for you. I always love talking to CEOs about how they think about their own development. Most of them I know are lifelong learners. So, I'm just curious, what are you trying to learn about today? How are you investing in your own development?
So a couple things. We spoke about AI. That's a big deal for us. So we're doing a lot of educational workshops right now, not just for, the team to use professionally, but how it can elevate yourself personally as well. So there's AI training that we're doing, and then also the policies around when not to use AI and technology in that way. So that's been a big deal. I do Toastmasters, so always looking to elevate myself and my public speaking. So that's another thing that I've invested in specifically over the last year or so. And then just working with some individual mentors and coaches. So having monthly coaching sessions for myself to help elevate myself professionally, but then also how to balance that work and home life and bringing those together. So making sure that I'm being consistent with that as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll leave it there. We've been talking to Marissa Frois, the CEO of the Entrepreneur Source. Marissa, where can people go to learn more about the work that you guys do?
Yep. So they could simply go to theentrepreneursource.com.
Awesome. All right. We'll make sure we get that in the show notes. And thanks again for being on the call today.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
Thank you for listening to the Future is Borderless podcast with David Nilssen. Be sure to click subscribe to future episodes so you can hear from more top entrepreneurs and thought leaders. And we'll see you again next time.